Tonight, a warm story from a market square at evening. Long ago, about an old man who wrote letters for those who could not. A young woman, a long way from home, and the words they found together to send her love back across the sea. At the end of the day, when the market in the square was packing itself away, old Elias sat at his little table under the arches and waited for his last letter. All day, the square had been full and loud. The stalls, the calls of the sellers, the crowd, the carts. But now, in the long gold light of the evening, it was emptying. The sellers were folding their cloths and stacking their crates and trundling their barrows away home. The awnings were coming down. The doves were dropping from the rooftops to walk about on the cooling stones and peck up what the day had dropped. The square was going quiet and turning gold and breathing out. Elias kept his table under the arches at the edge of the square, the covered walk where the shade was, where he had sat for more years than he liked to count, writing letters for the people who could not write them for themselves. That was his trade, and his father's before him. There were many in the town who had never learned their letters, and when they needed to send word to a son away soldiering, to a landlord, to a daughter married off, to a mother across the sea, they came to old Elias under the arches and told him what was in them, and he found the words and set them down. His table was a small and orderly world, the reed pens lying in their row, the pot of black ink, the good paper and the cheaper paper for those who had less, the little stick of red wax and the brass seal for closing a letter up safe, a candle not yet lit. He kept it all just so, the tools of a lifetime of other people's words, and he sat behind it now in the gold evening with his hands folded, in no hurry, watching the square empty and waiting to see if one more would come before the light went. And one more did. A young woman came in under the arches, hesitant, looking for him the way people did who had not come before, and stopped a little way off and gathered herself, and then came to his table. She was young, and not from here. He could see the far off in her, the look of someone a long way from where they had begun. She said, in a careful voice, that she wanted to send a letter to her mother, and Elias, who had been sending people's love to their mothers for 50 years, said what he always said. "Sit down," he told her. "There's time. Tell me." So she sat down on the stool across from him and tried to tell him. Her name was Lena, and she had come over the sea a year ago to work in a great house in the town, a good enough place with kind enough people, and she had not seen her mother since, nor would for a long while yet, for the sea was wide and a crossing cost a great deal. She sent word now and then, small letters by others' hands, to say she was well. But tonight, she said, she wanted to send a different one. She wanted, and then she stopped, because she did not quite know how to say what she wanted. Elias did not hurry her. He had seen this many times. The wanting that has no words yet. And he knew it was the most important part, and not to be rushed. So he waited, and the doves walked on the gold stones. And after a while, Lena tried again. She said her mother was getting old now. She said she herself was doing well here, and her mother would want to know that, and be proud. And then she said she wanted to write something, and here she reached for it. Something fine. Something that would say, properly, all that her mother was to her. A letter worthy of it. She had been saving for the good paper, she said, and for a real letter writer, so that this one would be right. And then she said, in a smaller voice, that she did not have the words for it, that whenever she tried to think how to say it, all that came to her were small, plain things, nothing grand enough. And so she had not sent it, month after month, waiting until she could find the proper way. And now her mother was another year older across the sea, and the letter still not written. Elias listened to all of it with his hands folded, and nodded, and did not pick up the pen. Then he asked her gently, not what fine thing she wanted to write, but what, of all the small plain things, came to her first when she thought of her mother. Lena was quiet a moment, caught off guard. And then, because he had asked it so plainly, the small plain things came. She said, her mother's hands. The way her mother's hands looked when they were working, flouring the board for the bread, or mending by the window in the last of the light. She said, the lemon tree by the door of the house at home, and how the whole house had smelled of it in the spring, and how she had not smelled anything like it once since she came over the sea. She said, the sound of her mother singing low to herself in the next room, that she used to half hear as she fell asleep when she was small, and would give anything to half hear now. She said these things almost to herself, looking at the gold stones, not thinking them grand enough to be written down. And old Elias, very quietly, had picked up the reed pen and dipped it, and begun. For these, he knew, were the letter, not the fine words she had been saving for, and could not find. There are no such words. There never are. But these, the hands, the lemon tree, the low singing, these were the love, the actual love, the thing she had carried over the sea, still folded up inside her. And her mother, reading them, would not find a grand and proper letter, but would find her daughter, right there on the paper, as near as ink can bring a person. So he wrote them down as she said them, in her own plain words, changing almost nothing, only smoothing them here and there, the way you straighten a collar, so that each small, true thing sat clear and whole on the page. And as he wrote, and she saw that he was writing, that the small plain things were going down on the good paper, were allowed, were enough. Lena began to talk more easily, the words coming now, all the things she had saved up for a year and thought too small to send. And Elias caught them and set them down, choosing each phrase with her, asking now and then, "Is that how you'd say it?" and changing it when it wasn't, until the words on the page were truly hers. When it was all down and the light was going amber, Elias read it back to her. He read it slowly, in the gentle, even voice of a man who had read 10,000 letters aloud, so that she could hear her own words come back to her and say whether they were right. And Lena sat and listened to her letter. Her mother's hands, the lemon tree, the low singing in the next room, all of it. All the small true things said plainly and clearly and warmly, one after another. The whole of her year of unspoken love laid out at last on the page. And she heard, listening, that it was right. That it was, in fact, exactly what she had wanted to say all along, and never could, because she had been looking for something grander. When this plain account of the small things she loved, was the grandest thing there was. She did not say much. She put her hand to her mouth, and her eyes were bright. But it was not a sad brightness. It was the brightness of a thing set right, of a weight, a year heavy, finally set down. She nodded when he finished and said yes. Yes. That was it. That was what she wanted her mother to have. Elias let her sit with it a moment. Then, because the light was nearly gone and the evening post would ride soon, he made the letter ready to send. He folded the good paper carefully, along clean, straight folds. He lit his candle at last and held the little stick of red wax to the flame and let it soften and drip. 3 warm red drops onto the fold, and then he pressed his brass seal into the soft wax and held it and lifted it away. And there it was, the letter closed and sealed, and Lena's love shut up safe inside it for its journey across the sea. And just in time, the post rider came. They heard him before they saw him. The slow clop of his horse coming round the square on his evening round. The way he came every evening at this hour. The last thing that happened in the square before the dark. He was an old friend of Elias's, the post rider. The two of them had been sending the town's words off into the world together for longer than either cared to say. He drew up his tired horse by the arches and leaned down, and Elias handed up the letter. Lena's letter, sealed and still warm, and told him, for the morning ship, across the water. And the rider looked at the name on it and nodded and tucked it into his bag with the rest of the evening's words, safe among them, and clicked to his horse and went on. Lena stood and watched him go, the post rider and his slow horse, crossing the last of the gold square and out through the far arch into the dusk, carrying her letter, carrying her mother's hands and the lemon tree and the low singing, off toward the harbour and the morning ship and the long blue road of the sea. And at the end of it, in a house she could see so clearly across all that water, her mother. It would be weeks getting there, but it was going. After a year, it was going. And watching it go, she found it was almost as though she had reached out across the whole wide sea and touched her mother's hand. The hoofbeats faded into the dusk. The square was nearly dark now, and nearly empty. And the letter was gone, on its way. Lena turned back to old Elias, to thank him, and to pay him. She paid him for the good paper, which was right. But when she tried to pay him more, for the words, for the help, for the hour, he would not take it. He told her the words had been hers all along. He had only handed her the pen, and then he told her, gently, to write again, and not to wait a year for the next one, and not to wait for grand words that would never come, only to send the small true things whenever she thought of them, because those were the ones that crossed the water. She said she would, and she thanked him once more, and went off across the darkening square toward the great house and her bed, lighter than she had come, her love sent at last. And Elias began, slowly, to pack up his little table. He capped the ink. He wiped the reed pen and laid it back in its row. He pinched out the candle, saving it. He folded away the good paper and the cheaper paper and the red wax and the brass seal, the tools of a lifetime of other people's words. And he did it all without hurry, the way he did everything, while the last of the light left the square and the first stars came out over the arches. He had spent his whole long life this way, sitting under these arches, taking the love and the news and the gladness that people could not write down themselves, and finding the words for it, and sending it off into the world to the ones it was meant for. It was a small trade. He had never grown rich at it. But sitting there in the warm dark of the emptying square, his day's last letter already gone off toward the sea, he thought, as he often thought at this hour, that there were worse ways to spend a life than helping people say what they could not say alone. But the square dark and quiet now, the stalls all gone home, the doves asleep up under the arches, old Elias's little table packed away for the night, the pens in their row, the wax and the seal put by, the first stars coming out over the rooftops, and far off, riding down toward the dark harbour, and the morning ship, the day's last letter, carrying its small true words of love out across the wide sea toward the one they were for.